You're listening to Shift Everything, a podcast by West 40, where we challenge the status quo in education. I'm your host, Chris Coffey. According to the News Literacy Project, news literacy is the ability to determine the credibility of news and other information, and to recognize the standards of fact-based journalism to know what to trust, share, and act on. And from the Illinois State Board of Education, beginning with the 2022-2023 school year, every public high school in Illinois is now required by law to include in its curriculum a unit of instruction on media literacy, including instructions on how to access information, analyze and evaluate media messages, create media, reflect on media consumption, as well as the social responsibility of engaging with media of all forms. Our guest on this episode of Shift Everything is Alba Mendiola, a former broadcast television reporter who now teaches AP Spanish and broadcast journalism in a bilingual program at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School in Chicago. She was also recently named Educator of the Year by the News Literacy Project. Alba, thanks for joining us on this episode of Shift Everything.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to hear from you, Alba. You and I used to work together at NBC and Telemundo Chicago several years ago. Could you just describe to our listeners what news literacy is, what media literacy is, and why it's so important in today's day and age?
Well, it's so important, Chris. Let me tell you that creating media is more than just doing TikToks or creating some photos for Instagram or Facebook. It's more than that. It's a collection of skills that the students need for critical thinking. So if the students learn how to access, how to analyze, how to evaluate, create, and communicate with media, they're learning those new skills. As we know, the traditional literacy skills is reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But creating media goes beyond that. As we know, there are a lot of people now, we all have cell phones. And unfortunately, many people think that just because you have your cell phone, right, you can call yourself a journalist. And we know that that is not true, right? You need to be trained. So the students now need to learn how the ethics for journalism work and how to create a balance and content that is true, right? Like we are now in the fake news situations where we don't know when it's true. So the students need to learn that.
And when you and I were learning the journalism trade, it was fact, never show opinion. But there's just so many things and devices out there where people can put their opinion on a particular topic and slant it one way or the other.
Exactly. At some point, the traditional way to consume news, like in the morning, you get up, you get your newspaper, you read the newspaper, you go to work, maybe you're listening, something happening on the radio. Then you go back home and you watch the nightly news, right? There's some breaking news, something happening. Now it's different. Now you have news all over, the internet, and you don't know who is behind it and what's the reason why they are creating that content. And sometimes, now all the different platforms, you can monetize your content. So it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's just a matter of getting people to view your videos so you can make money.
And here in Illinois, it is now the law to teach students media literacy. Was there a particular reason why they wanted to start this law in recent years? Is it having an impact so far?
That is what the challenge is, right? Like I understand as a teacher, I understand that sometimes mandates, it could be a challenge for the teachers, right? Like because you already have your curriculum, you already have, you can only include so much in a school year in your class. And then you have this new mandate. And it's like, oh my God, how am I going to include this? But the truth is that there's a few things that you might be doing already, and you're just going to put a new label on it. And then you're going to decide, oh, now I understand this is part of the media literacy. But to me, is, for example, this unit could be in any class. It doesn't have to be specifically on the English class, for example, on the journalist class. It could be in the Spanish. Like I said, I'm doing the bilingual course. You can analyze and you can evaluate and you create news content in Spanish. And so they are learning vocabulary, they're learning how to produce this. You can do this in the science class, for example, where you are going to see how the weather works. And you can have a green screen, like we just need a cloth, right? And then you can create. There's so many apps you can do for students to work on how to produce the weather segment. You can do it in math. There's so much to do with this, like algorithms, how the algorithms work, and how this is affecting how we consume news, because the algorithms learn what you want and they only give you that. So it doesn't expand to other things. So I'm also the ambassador for the News Literacy Project, and I would like to promote that too, because it's amazing. The organization that gave me an award is called the News Literacy Project, and like you mentioned at the beginning in the introduction, is to develop the active consumers of news and information, and the students will determine what the credibility of news is. But as a teacher, you also need to get lessons, right? Like if you want to create your lessons from scratch, it's going to take you really, really long time. But the News Literacy Project have lessons available for teachers to use, and they're all free. So you can create an account. Your students can log in and be in your class, and it's just amazing. I hope everybody that is listening go to the News Literacy Project website. It's called the newslit.org. There's also another website that is part of the News Literacy Project. It's called Checkology, and you can log in checkology.org, and that's where you're going to find all these different lessons that you can use in your classrooms. Checkology has some lessons in Spanish too. I use them quite a lot. Not many, but there's a few where you can teach the students how to write a story. So the lesson, it's about like pretending you are the reporter and they're calling you to work on a story. And let me tell you, working so many years in news, and I've seen this lesson, it's really good. I mean, it's almost very similar to what the reality is for a reporter to work in the field. One new thing that the News Literacy Project is doing, there is a professional learning website where the teachers can learn how to teach the news literacy. They can earn a news literacy educator certificate and a digital badge. And this one, again, it's free, it's on demand, and it's self-paced. So you can work a little bit in your course, and then if you don't have more time, you can do it the next day or whenever you have the time to complete it, and then you will earn this news literacy educator certificate and badge.
Alba, what is your approach to teaching news literacy to your students, and how are your students taking to it? Are they enjoying it? Are they learning things that they didn't think they would have to learn? Are they seeing the benefits?
Well, the unique thing about my school, and I love my school, my students are wonderful, but the unique thing about my school is that they are all bilingual. So they consume news in two languages. And you know how important it is, especially for our Latino families. When they come from other countries, they don't forget what's happening there. They want to know what is happening in Mexico and Colombia and Venezuela, and they consume those news. And they need to learn if it's legit or not. They make decisions based on the news. So that's what it's so important for them, to teach them how to identify the legitimate sources of news. And let me tell you, I love it. What I'm doing is I'm so passionate about it. I always say that I have two passions, journalism and teaching. And doing this job is just combines those two passions. And I love to see my students getting into it. We read the news, we create podcasts, we create videos. And the interesting thing is sometimes they come to me and they show me their news feeds and they say, "Oh, Miss Mendiola, is this true?" And then I see like, that looks like an AI created image, and we know now, the AI is the trending issues right now in education. But yeah, like I love to see when it's like when you create something new and this is your work, it's so unique, and it's so great to see that they're so proud of their production and what they did.
And you don't have to be a former journalist to have a knowledge of this because you have organizations like the News Literacy Project that could help get you started, right?
Exactly. And again, going back to the traditional way to learn, right? Like you are in the classroom, you have a book, you learn, and then you have an exam or you create a project, and then you have to go to the library, right? Like that was the use. We used to do that. And now we all go to the websites. You go to the internet. But the librarians, they can tell you where to find information. They do a lot of research on the best tools to use. It is important to include them. They have all the resources as well.
Could you talk a little bit about the award you won and how you got involved with the News Literacy Project? Did you always consider media literacy in your teachings, or is this just something that came up in recent years?
Well, let me tell you, and I'm going to try to make the long story short, but in 2016, that's when I left Telemundo. I had almost 18 years experience in working in news in Mexico and here in Chicago. But at some point, I had to make that decision because I'm sure you were invited to the career day or being a principal of a day and things like that. And every time I was invited to a school, I was just like amazed. It's like, I want to be here. I want to be a teacher. So that was always in my heart. So I decided to leave and become a teacher. And I was so determined to make it happen that I went back and I get to school and I got my master's degree in teaching and I got my license too, teaching Spanish because I also teach AP Spanish here in my school. And that was amazing. That was the best decision I could make for my career. And they didn't have the broadcasting journalism class here in my school, so I proposed it, and I said, "Why don't we do something about media? And I can teach them how to produce and how to analyze, and this is going to be good for their critical thinking skills." And they say yes. So they gave me that great opportunity. So I started looking for resources to create the curriculum. And for me, being an investigative reporter, so that helped me. And I found all of this and I start using it. And one of my colleagues, nominate me for this award. And last June in 2023, I went to Washington D.C. and I feel so proud, you know, uh, it's so amazing, like to have this recognition. And like I told them, I feel that the recognition is just not for me, but for the need of recognizing the Latino community, right? Because since I'm doing this class in English and Spanish, I think it's so important to recognize there are people that consume news in other languages. And I'm sure not just in Spanish, but in many other languages. And a News Literacy Project is also trying to make all their resources they have in other languages. I'm going to start working online with schools that in Mexico that can help them being trained for news literacy. We know that the elections are coming up soon, not just here in the United States, but also in Mexico and other Latin American countries. So people need to learn what they have in their phones, and they can make decisions based on true facts, not necessarily just somebody who had a cell phone and decided to create a video with fake news.
These days, we see headlines, we make judgments just after reading two or three sentences without reading the full articles. I think that's safe to say most people are in that mode now. But are your students getting excited to dig deeper, to go beyond the headlines, to actually click on the whole article and read it?
Exactly. So in my class, I have different lessons, right? And I ask them to evaluate all the different websites that are out there with legitimate news, of course. Like we saw the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun Times, some of the local stations, Telemundo in Spanish, Univision, NBC. And I ask them to see, the main title of the story, and then what do you think this mean? And then now read it all. So do you think it includes everything that you want to know? What is missing, right? If you were the reporter, how would you follow up on that story? And then, try to write it. I wish I had more time, right? Like just my class, it's a 1 semester long. I wish I could have more time, but I try to give them a little bit of everything. Like I said, we produce podcasts, we write a story, an article for a newspaper, and we also work on videos. And there's so much. Let me tell you, it is so needed. It is so important. This topic is not just for the schools, but also for adults. I get some people and some parents asking me, I remember you were in television. And then sometimes they ask me, okay, is this really happening? In Mexico, the elections are going this way. What do you think? And I check on their what news sources are you reading the news? And I say like, well, yeah, well, this one is very to the left or this is very to the right. So I kind of try to explain a little bit to them. Like I said, it's not just for students but for everybody.
And Alba, if we can wrap things up, could you provide the website or where people can learn more about news literacy, media literacy, and any advice for teachers out there who want to improve their teachings of this in their classrooms?
Absolutely. And like I said, this new mandate could be very stressful for some teachers, but again, there are free. There's free resources for you. You can find it at newslit.org. Newslit.org is the News Literacy Project website, and also in Checkology.org. It's part of the News Literacy Project. You just log in. Like I said, all the information, all the resources are free, and you can also learn the News Literacy Educator Certificate and a digital badge. It's free, it's on demand, and self-paced, and it's great. And you probably don't have to spend too many hours creating your lessons from scratch. You can just grab it from there.
Former broadcast journalist in Chicago and current teacher Alba Mendiola, it was great talking to you. Thank you for joining us today to tell us more about news literacy on this episode of Shift Everything.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Shift Everything. We want to hear your thoughts and bold ideas and share your educational accomplishments. To join the conversation, email us at shifteverything@west40.org.